Okay, we have reconvened inside since it was a little sticky and we felt like maybe we were getting bit by bugs. All right, part 2 of Muffy's Secret Admirer. We are in chapter 5. What's the matter, Muffy? Francine asked as Muffy stormed over to her during afternoon recess. What's the matter? I'll tell you what's the matter. Sue Ellen is trying to steal my secret admirer. Really? I didn't know you already had figured out who it was. Well, not completely, Muffy admitted. She pointed to a game of kickball, but I've narrowed it down to someone playing in that game. Sue Ellen and I were discussing the possibilities when the ball was kicked to us. She kicked it back, and they asked her to play. Now she's showing off. So, said Francine, so my secret admirer is out there. What if he's impressed by her brute strength? I'm sure he's more loyal than that, said Francine. Well, I don't want to take any chances. This secret admirer business can be very tricky, Francine. I can't wait too long to answer him. Francine fidgeted a little. But he's a secret admirer, Muffy. Maybe he wants to keep it that way. Muffy dismissed this idea with a wave of her hand. Oh, I don't believe that. It's just a way to get my attention. So what will you do? Muffy had that figured out. I'm going to hire Buster right away. He's a detective. He can find out who it is. Then I won't have to wonder anymore. Francine looked worried. Buster was a pretty good detective. He had once figured out the truth about Arthur and the missing quarters. Would he discover this time? Had she left any clues for Buster to find? This must be her dreaming or daydreaming. Francine and the Brain were standing in the prisoner's box before the judge. They wore striped pajamas and had a ball and chain attached to an ankle. The judge sat on a high bench before them. He was wearing a powdered white wig, but there was something familiar about him. You look like my teacher, Mr. Ratburn, Francine told him. Silence, roared the judge. In my court, you will speak only when ordered to do so. Continue, sir. Oh, there they are. He pointed to Arthur, who was interviewing a witness. Arthur was wearing a wig, too. He kept wrinkling his nose. Francine decided the wig powder must be itchy. Your name, please, said Arthur. Buster Baxter. Your occupation? Buster sat straight up in the witness chair. Private detective, he said. He handed Arthur a business card and gave one to the judge, too. No case is too small, he boasted, to occupy my full attention. Yes, said Arthur. Now tell us, Mr. Baxter, what did you discover after being hired by Muffy Crossfire? Buster consulted a small rat notepad. After getting this assignment, I quickly determined that Francine and the Brain were responsible. He looked up at Francine. It was child's play. The judge slammed down his gavel. That's all the evidence I needed to hear. Guilty as charged. As Francine and the Brain were dragged out of the courtroom, Francine called out, It was just a joke! But nobody even smiled. Chapter 6. Francine found the Brain sitting against a tree. He was drawing in his notebook. Francine could just make out a stick figure inside a laboratory during a thunderstorm before Brain closed the cover. Don't you love it when a plan comes together, he said. Our plan isn't coming together, she told him. It's falling apart. Impossible. The Brain stood up. We cannot fail. Francine snorted. You hope. Maybe our letter was a little too convincing. I mean, it's really stirred up Muffy's curiosity. She can't wait to find out who her secret admirer is. Of course not. That's what we had hoped. I know, but we didn't hope that she would hire Buster to investigate. The Brain paused for a moment. Unexpected, but not important. Buster's good, but he'll never trace anything to us. A detective needs clues to learn something, and I'm too clever to have left any clues. Oh, really? Well, Arthur figured out that you wrote the note. He didn't think anyone but you could use regardless correctly. The Brain was not impressed. Just a fluke, he maintained. Now for phase 2. He consulted his notebook. We need to take the next step. Which do you prefer, candy or flowers? Francine glared at him. What's wrong with you? We're in big trouble enough. We're in a big enough mess already. I don't want it to get any bigger. The Brain just laughed. I wonder if he did his evil laugh. The mad scientist, Dr. Brain, straightened his lab coat as he stood at the computer screen blackboard, finishing an equation. Dealing with Muffy Crossfire will be the final test before I unleash my plan for taking over the world. Ha ha ha! He cackled wildly as lightning flashed outside the window. Isn't that right, my loyal assistant? From the shadows, a peasant girl in rags stepped out. I guess so, master, Francine said quietly. Louder! Shouted Dr. Brain. I can't, she said. And why not? Because I'm not sure. Dr. Brain turned on her. Not sure? Not sure? How dare you to question me? Francine cringed at his tone. But she wouldn't change her mind. This crosswire girl worries me, she went on. She is used to getting her way. So am I, Dr. Brain reminded her. Oh, yeah, that's why we're stuck doing experiments in this crummy dungeon. Francine looked down. And boy, do I need a bath. Silence, cried Dr. Brain. Earth to brain, earth to brain. That was his dream. Francine snapped. The Brain rubbed his eyes. Sorry, he said. As I was saying, Francine continued, I think maybe we made a mistake. Just remember, said the Brain, we didn't start this. Muffy did. Well, what are we going to do about it? Tell the truth, said Arthur, coming up behind him. It's your best chance to keep the situation from getting worse. We're not that desperate, the Brain insisted. Francine wasn't so sure. Not yet, she muttered. Chapter 7. On the other side of the playground, Buster stood quietly thinking. Hey, Buster, cried Muffy. Buster didn't answer. He was staring at the ground. Hello? Buster finally looked up. I'm concentrating, he explained. That's good, said Muffy. Now stop and tell me what you found out about my secret admirer. Buster cleared his throat. It's too bad you waited so long to hire me. I didn't wait. This all happened today. Buster shook his head. Time is not the same for detectives as it is for other people. Anyway, I examined the note. It's handwritten. I knew that. In block letters to disguise the handwriting. Muffy rolled her eyes. I knew that too. Then I examined your desk, which we detectives refer to as the crime scene. And, Buster shrugged, unfortunately the area has been contaminated. Too many fingerprints, footprints. Oof, said Muffy. Are you saying you've discovered nothing? Did I mention the block letters? Muffy groaned. Some detective you are. If I had paid you already, I'd be asking for a refund. As Muffy and Buster talked, Francine and the Brain watched from behind the tire swings. Look at them, said Francine, going over every detail, figuring out each part of our scheme. It really wasn't that complicated, said the Brain. Francine bit her lip. Let's confess before it's too late. We can throw ourselves on the mercy of the court. Brain's eyes narrowed. You're being unrealistic. They'll never take us alive. Francine threw up her hands. Well, now I feel much better. What a mess this stupid note has caused. I wish we'd never written it. Hey, Francine. Arthur came running up to them. Has Buster interviewed you yet? He's working his way through the class. Uh-oh. Oh, they are. They're hiding behind the tire swings. They're so nervous they're going to get in trouble. Francine blinked. I know, I'll crack like an egg under his questions. She looked down. There I'll be, in little pieces all over the playground. The Brain sighed. The thrill of revenge seems to be short-lived, he admitted. I suppose we should clear this up and apologize. Francine brightened. You mean it? I'll try, said the Brain. How about this? He cleared his throat. Muffy, I'm sorry I allowed myself to get upset about the way you bribed the judges. Arthur frowned. I don't think that's quite right, he said. It's missing a certain something. Like crawling on her knees and begging for forgiveness, said Francine. The Brain cleared his throat. Yes, I see your point. Let me try again. Muffy, I'm sorry I couldn't let a huge justice go unpunished, but I guess I had no choice. Francine shook her head. Clearly, they had a long way to go. Chapter 8. By the end of lunch, Francine was just about worn out. She had tried to make progress with the Brain, but her efforts had not been rewarded. I thought I was doing better, said the Brain. Francine shook her head. Calling Muffy a fast-talking bamboozler is not doing better. Did I hear my name? Asked Muffy, coming around the corner. No, Francine and the Brain said together. Oh, well, it doesn't matter. She beamed at them. I have important news. I found out who wrote the note. You did? Said Francine. Well, we can and I've taken steps to follow up, Muffy went on. Steps? The Brain repeated. What kind of steps? I wrote a note back saying that while he has good taste, a love between us can never be. That's quite a note, Francine admitted. Can I see it? Oh, no, said Muffy. I already put it in his locker. Francine and the Brain gasped. An impulsive decision, said the Brain. Very, added Francine. Whose locker did you put it in? Rattles. Rattles, said the Brain. The kid with all those muscles, even in his head? Muffy nodded. Poor thing, I know. I'm breaking his heart. But you fall in love, you take your chances. Well, see you later. She walked off, leaving Francine and the Brain gasping for air. This really is a mess, said the Brain. I'll say, said Francine. Rattles will pulverize her if he reads that note. I tried to warn you, said the brain. Writing that note was ill-advised. Francine gaped at him. You tried to warn me. The brain smiled weakly. Never mind, he said. This is no time for finger-pointing. It's time for action. He led Francine to Rattles' locker. Now what? Asked Francine. We're on the outside, and his note is on the inside. The brain pressed his eye to the vents. I can't see anything. Francine scratched her head. What if we stick some gum to a piece of string and then drop the string through the vent? The note might stick to it, and we could pull it out. You actually think that would work? Francine shrugged. It's our last hope. Well, when you put it like that, said the brain, I say we give it a try. Where's your gum? Francine quickly chewed a stick of gum, attached it to some string from her pocket. Here goes. She tried to push the gum through one of the slots. Unfortunately, it got stuck on the way. Uh-oh, she said. Wait a minute, said the brain. He opened his backpack and took out a piece of wire. I have this left over from my science experiment. He fished the wire under the locker door. If we're lucky, the note is sitting on the bottom. I may be able to snag... Ah, I've got something. He brought out a piece of paper. That doesn't look like... Francine began. It's not, said the brain. This is a page from a bodybuilding magazine. He sighed, but Rattles won't be building any bodies in the near future. He'll be taking some apart. And why is that? Francine and the brain jumped around. Rattles was standing before them. I'm not going to ask you again, Rattles said. What are you doing at my locker? It's a good question, said Francine. Excellent, the brain agreed. Concise, to the point, even... I'm waiting, said Rattles. Would you believe that we're here because of the nice view? The brain asked. No. How about that we're big fans, said Francine, and we're waiting around to get your autograph? I don't think so, said Rattles. Why would you be fans of mine all of a sudden? I haven't done anything special lately. Francine looked at the brain. Your turn, she said. I'm thinking, he replied. Suddenly, Muffy appeared behind Rattles. What's going on here? She asked. I found these two trying to break into my locker, Rattles explained. Really, said Muffy, and I keep asking them why, but I haven't got the right answer yet. He folded his arms, and time is running out. Well, before it does, Muffy said calmly, I should tell you that they're here because of me. Rattles stared at her. Oh, yeah? Then maybe I should hold you responsible. He took a threatening step toward her. Now, said the brain, darting between them. Let's not be hasty. It's all my fault. And mine, said Francine. So if you must pulverize someone, make it be me. You see, the brain explained, we were mad at Muffy and wrote her a fake love note. She thought you wrote it and wrote you a note back. Now it's in your locker, but you probably shouldn't read it. He and Francine looked at Rattles for a reaction. You expect me to believe a ridiculous story like that? It's not ridiculous, Francine insisted. Use your imagination, the brain suggested. That's what we did. Suddenly, Rattles started laughing. Then Muffy laughed too. Francine wanted to laugh with them, but first she wanted to know what was so funny. Did we miss something? You should have seen the looks on your faces, said Rattles. It's priceless, said Muffy. Well, maybe not priceless, but certainly worth a lot. Rattles agreed. You were right, Muffy. They really did look like you put a note in my locker. Oh, brother. I think we've been set up, said the brain. Francine looked at Muffy. You mean you knew we wrote the note? Not at first. That's why I hired Buster. But I also noticed how worried Arthur looked every time he talked to you, and he kept mumbling about telling the truth. So I added things up. Then I asked Rattles for a favor. Francine wanted to say something. She was partly mad and partly relieved. The brain, however, had a thought. Revenge, she said sadly, is overrated. Chapter 10. As the bell rang, everyone filed back into class. We're sorry we wrote the note, said Francine, having finally gotten over her shock. Muffy nodded. Well, I can understand why you did. You can? Said the brain. Certainly. You're upset that I'm better than you at science. The brain took a deep breath. You may be better at winning contests, but you're not better at science. Muffy stopped to think about this. I don't see the difference, she said. All right, everyone, said Mr. Ratburn. Take your seats. It's time to announce the winner for the best display in the science fair. He held up the sheet of paper. The judges voted for the display that was, well, let's say one of the tastiest. Muffy raised her hand. Excuse me, Mr. Ratburn. Yes, Muffy. I just wanted to say that I've been thinking. There's something new, the brain muttered. Francine elbowed him in the side. The brain's project really was more scientific than mine, Muffy went on. I think he deserves the award more than I do. Ooh, the class cried out. Mr. Ratburn cleared his throat. Well, Muffy, he said, I suppose that's very noble of you. I guess she's not so bad after all, the brain whispered to Francine. I feel like a dope. Unfortunately, Mr. Ratburn continued, you didn't win the contest, so I'm afraid the award isn't yours to pass along. What? Cried everyone. Muffy turned as red as a ruby ring. As I was saying, Mr. Ratburn went on, the winner of the award for the best entry in the science fair is Francine Frensky. He handed Francine a handsome plaque, which she displayed on her desk. The brain turned to her in surprise. You? All this time I was worried about Muffy, and you turned out to be the competition? How was that possible? Francine smiled sweetly at him. Maybe you just need to learn to cook, she said. The brain just rolled his eyes. Congratulations, Francine, Muffy said quietly. The way things turned out, maybe I would have been better off with a secret admirer after all. Francine smiled at her award. Well, as you said before, it's food for thought. So all that time, the brain and Francine were plotting against Muffy because they thought she had won the science fair. Guess what? She hadn't won it at all. They did all of that stuff for nothing. Revenge wasn't even necessary. The end.